drinking seawater to survive. Do you believe that is the only way for a nation in the middle of the ocean to keep from dying of thirst? But the sea does not just surround them. It divides families, jobs, and essential supplies. Here, food must cross the ocean to reach the stores. Fresh water is always a matter of calculation, and a delayed ferry can disrupt an entire market, medical appointments, and a family's income. Or behind the paradise beaches of Sal lies a life much harsher than its tourist image. So how do people live among these isolated islands? And what makes them still call Cape Verde home? On the map, Santo Antão, Fogo, and Sal are just 3 parts of the same country. Standing on the ground, they can make one think they have traveled through 3 different climate zones. Santo Antão elevates its terrain into mountain walls, deep ravines, and valleys turned green by moisture. Roads wind around steep slopes. Villages, fields, and vehicles must adapt to every fold of the terrain. On Fogo, Pico do Fogo rises from a wide caldera draped in dark volcanic rock and ash. The soil in Chundas calderas can support grapes and some crops. It simultaneously reminds people that the mountain is not yet asleep. The eruptions in 2014 and 2015 destroyed homes and infrastructure in the caldera region. Just a few months later, efforts to clear roads and dig up building foundations had already begun to appear. That return does not erase the risk. It shows just how deeply livelihoods and memories are tied to the land. Coming to Sal, the place stretches out with a low, dry surface and fewer green trees. The wind sweeps across empty lands, sand dunes, and settlements dependent on water, energy, and outside supplies. The coast brings tourism and jobs. Cape Verde's nature opens opportunities while also setting limits. It determines where crops can be grown, where desalination is needed, where roads cling to cliffs, and where a whole village lives alongside a volcano. The landscape explains why the islands develop differently. The sea between them dictates how easily people can meet each other. Dawn in Santo Antão does not break at the same time for everyone. The light touches the mountain peaks first, then slowly slides down to the roofs set deep in the valley. Below, a new day has already begun, with the sound of footsteps on stone, the noise of aluga engines, and water running through small irrigation trenches. In Vale do Pole, the green color easily makes outsiders forget that most of Cape Verde has to live with an arid climate. A Bananas, sugarcane, vegetables, and fruit trees are grown on plots of land that depend on the slope and water sources. Farming space is squeezed between the mountains. People have to figure out how to get their produce down to town, the vehicle schedules, and the human power needed for areas hard for machinery to reach. A short trip can still include steep roads, waiting time for vehicles, and a leg through the port. In drier coastal communities, daily life revolves around fishing boats, the wind, sea conditions, and the amount of goods arriving at the store. On Fogo, the rhythm of life is also influenced by volcanic soil, the distance to São Felipe, and memories of past evacuations. Cape Verdean village life, therefore, does not have a single mold. In some places, people look up at the clouds to measure the chances of a harvest. In others, they look out at the waves to decide whether they can set sail for the day. Despite the differences, the communities all rely on something hard to see in the big picture: the hands of those living around them. An open door in Mindelo can lead into a multi-generational home, but the family story inside often extends far beyond its four walls. On the table is a meal for grandparents and young children. On the phone are relatives living in Europe or the United States. Distance has become a familiar part of Cape Verdean life. Many families divide responsibilities in flexible ways. The spirit of collaboration is often evoked by the concept of juntamon, putting hands together on a task so it can be accomplished. While Morabeza speaks to the openness, hospitality, and welcoming feeling that Cape Verde often uses to describe itself. Those concepts only hold meaning when they become actions. That could be a meal with an extra portion shared, a sum of money sent home to pay tuition, a room prepared for a relative returning in the summer. Remittances from relatives abroad help many households pay for food, education, healthcare, or home repairs. Yet support always comes with a void. Children may grow up while their father or mother works abroad. Those who return bring new habits, while those who stay keep the old rhythm of life. A Cape Verdean family is located in a neighborhood, but also exists through phone calls, packages, and return visits. It is within that distance that a shared identity is preserved by a language stronger than any shipping route. An identity that captivates not only Cape Verde, but the entire world. It is embraced as spiritual nourishment, a means of self-expression, and an element deeply woven into a nation's traditions, a musical identity. Before the sound of instruments rang out, Cape Verde carried within it a history that was far from peaceful. Historical sources do not record a permanent residential community on the archipelago before the Portuguese began settling in the 15th century. The place later became a massive transit hub in the transatlantic slave trade. That history left a deep cut. From the forced encounters between Africa and Europe, a Creole society gradually formed. Cape Verdean culture grew out of loss, adaptation, and blending across many generations. In Mindelo, that depth finds its way into morna. The vocals are often slow, the lyrics carrying love, the sea, separation, and saudade, a feeling of missing a person or a homeland that is out of reach. Morna combines vocals, poetry, instruments, and dance. In 2019, UNESCO inscribed this practice as an intangible cultural heritage of humanity. Santiago brings a different rhythm. The batucaderas sit in a circle, beating the rhythm on their thighs and clapping, while call and response vocals guide the dancers' movements. Funana pushes the tempo faster with the gaita and ferrinho carrying the energy of dance and large gatherings. These genres do not stand still in the past. They step into recording studios, festivals, schools, bars, and the works of young artists. For locals, it remains the place where family memories and the archipelago's history find a voice. Music helps Cape Verde recognize itself. However, identity cannot feed a family if jobs are not stable enough. Every morning, as the resorts on Sal prepare breakfast for tourists, a different working rhythm has already begun at the Mindelo port, the Praia market, and the fields in Santo Antão. It is the same country, but opportunities are not spread evenly across the map. On Sal and Boa Vista, tourism creates jobs in hotels, restaurants, transportation, construction, and maritime services. For some young workers, these two islands become destinations when seeking jobs in the tourism industry. In coastal villages, the value of a day can depend on the amount of fish returning to the dock. An empty boat affects the fishmonger, the transporter, the food stalls, and the family dinner. Small-scale agriculture still plays an important role on Santiago, Santo Antão, and Fogo. Yet limited arable land, erratic rainfall, and the cost of bringing products to market make incomes highly volatile. In Chadas calderas, grapes grow on black volcanic soil and are processed into local wine. In the highlands of Fogo, coffee continues to be tied to farming households and the specialty market. Families might combine wages, small business, agriculture, and remittances from abroad. Tourism is currently a major driver of the Cape Verdean economy. The concentration on a few islands also makes the distribution of opportunities and risks uneven. And even when there is an income, another question still waits at the market. How much can that money buy in a country that has to import most of its goods? The price of a bag of rice in Praia begins to form long before it appears in the store. It goes through cargo ships, ports, warehouses, and trucks on an archipelago divided by the sea. Only when tracing that path does the pressure on a family's budget become clear. At the Sucupira market, Vegetables, fish, clothes, household goods, and imported foods crowd together in narrow aisles. Shoppers compare prices, switch brands, or reduce quantities to save money for electricity, water, gas, transportation, and education. Cape Verde is surrounded by the ocean, but fresh water is scarce. On dry islands like Sal, life relies entirely on drops of water extracted from the ocean. Few know that behind the cold tap water in a hotel or a resident's utility bill is a highly complex underground system. The hotel tap and the household bill both rely on the complex system behind them. Just like water, every meal here also has to overcome immense pressures to reach the dining table. Cape Verde must import the majority of the food it consumes, making prices vulnerable to international markets, fuel, and shipping disruptions. In a community far from the port, choices may be fewer and wait times longer. A delayed ship can leave shelves empty, hike ingredient prices, or cause merchants to miss a day of sales. Families must therefore calculate carefully. They buy in season, use local products when possible, and stretch the value of every meal. From those small calculations, Cape Verde's iconic dish begins to tell a larger story. Everything starts with the ingredients placed in the pot. Corn and beans form the base of cachupa. Then each family adds the ingredients they have: vegetables, potatoes, squash, fish, meat or sausage, depending on the season, budget, and customs of each island. A slow-cooked pot of cachupa does not demand that all ingredients be the same. It is this very adaptability that allows the dish to endure across many living conditions. In a kitchen on Santiago, the sound of a knife hitting a cutting board blends with the heat from a large pot. Out at the market, fish has just been brought in from the dock. Corn and beans might come from domestic farms or through a long import chain. Cachupa is often called the national dish, but its meaning does not lie in a fixed recipe. It shows how people combine what is available to create a meal enough for many. The leftovers can be pan-fried the next morning into cachupa refogada, a dry, flavorful dish often served with a fried egg. A meal stretched even further. Reusing leftover cachupa reflects the habit of making the most of ingredients in family life. No part is easily wasted. That habit becomes even more meaningful in a country where food prices are heavily impacted by seasons and imports. Alongside cachupa are grilled fish, stews, goat cheese, Fogo coffee, and many variations across the islands. Outside the kitchen, transportation and the pace of daily life determine what can make it into that pot. Between São Vicente and Santo Antão, the horizon can make the two islands look so close that one only needs to reach out a hand to touch them. In reality, every meeting still depends on ports, ferry schedules, wind, and sea conditions. A culturally unified nation must operate through many disconnected segments. From a mountain village in Santo Antão, a passenger can take an aluguer down to Porto Novo, wait for a ferry to Mindelo, then continue by bus or taxi. For someone visiting family, that is a familiar journey. For students, patients, or small merchants, that schedule can determine their schooling, medical care, and income. Goods travel a similar path, but they are more complex. A crate of vegetables needs to be harvested at the right time, brought down to the port, kept from spoiling, and matched with a buyer on the other island. Delayed by one leg, its value can drop. Domestic flights help shorten some journeys. Ticket prices and the number of flights still affect accessibility. Smartphones have changed how people book tickets, transfer money, call rides, and stay in touch. Information crosses the sea almost instantly. People, however, do not. Limited inter-island connectivity is affecting supply chains, tourism distribution, and job opportunities. Therefore, a ferry trip does not simply connect two ports. It connects schools to students, markets to farmers, and families accustomed to living on two different shores. Young people feel this limit most clearly. They are having to choose where to stake their futures. Morning in Praia, the classrooms and streams of people heading to work create a feeling that the future is expanding right in the capital. For many young people, the question does not stop at a career. They also have to decide whether to stay on their home island, move to Praia or Mindelo, find work on Sal, or embark on the journey of migration that many previous generations once chose. The internet helps an artist in Mindelo bring music to audiences outside the archipelago. A small business can promote its lodgings, handicrafts, or services off the island. The door has opened wider. The scale of the economy remains small. Not every island has training schools, hospitals, or a labor market large enough to keep young people after graduation. Migration can bring new income and skills. Leaving brings back capital and knowledge, but at the cost of a manpower shortage back home. Cape Verde's future is therefore being built in many places at once. A part in Praia, a part in the tourist islands. A part lies within the diaspora community. The important thing is not to force young people to choose between leaving and their homeland, but to help them maintain connections and have a reason to return. As the workday closes, that connection often emerges most clearly through the sounds of the evening. The sound of the instrument appears before one sees where it comes from. In Mindelo, a melody can drift through a window, cross a square, and blend into the chatter from small cafes. The evening slows the city's rhythm. Vendors close their stalls. Vendors close their stalls. Families gather back around the meal. Children play ball between rows of houses, while adults sit in their doorways, catching the cool breeze after a sunny day. In a music bar, morna pulls listeners back to stories of separation. Elsewhere, funana makes the room move faster. Evening is also the time when families call relatives in different time zones. A screen lights up in a dark room. The distance temporarily shrinks. Community life lies in the habit of recognizing a neighbor's voice, knowing who just returned, and saving an extra chair for guests. That peacefulness is very real. It also makes it very easy for outsiders to forget the pressures that will return the next morning. The harshness in Cape Verde rarely appears in a single moment. It accumulates in a depleting reservoir, a delayed ferry, rising commodity prices, and a rainy season that does not arrive as expected. When those signs converge, the impact can travel from the field to the table in a very short time. Water is the fundamental limit. Sparse and unpredictable rainfall forces agriculture to rely on water-saving irrigation, water retention, and crop selection. Cape Verde suffers from prolonged water scarcity, while rainfall is often erratic. On the dry islands, desalination helps sustain urban areas and tourism. This system requires electricity, maintenance, and continuous investment. Water is therefore never a background detail. It dictates the cost of living, farming viability, and the pace of development in each region. Food security adds further pressure. Importing the majority of food makes families sensitive to fuel prices and shipping disruptions. Tourism brings foreign currency and jobs. But this heavy reliance also makes the economy vulnerable when the flow of international tourists declines. Risks vary among the islands. Fogo lives with the possibility of volcanic eruptions. Santo Antão faces steep terrain, erosion, and hard-to-reach communities. Sal and Boa Vista must balance water resources, construction, and the pressure from tourism. Islands with fewer visitors struggle to access the same level of investment and job opportunities. The people do not passively endure. They adjust their harvest seasons, save water, combine income sources, relocate, and rely on family networks. Adaptability helps life continue. It does not make the hardships disappear. After seeing the full price of isolation, the final question truly carries weight. Why do the people still call these islands home? Why does a person return to Chadas calderas after lava has swallowed their old house? Why does a family in Santo Antão continue farming on steep slopes when more stable work might be in Praia or outside the country? There is no single answer for everyone. Some stay because the land is tied to their livelihoods and family memories. Some find opportunities in tourism, services, or business. A homeland in a country with a large diaspora does not end at the coastline. It follows the people. Morabeza creates a sense of being welcomed, but the deeper bond lies in the feeling of being recognized. In a small community, the returnee is not entirely a stranger. Family names, neighborhoods, and old stories place them back into a pre-existing network. Staying does not mean life is easy. Leaving does not mean abandoning the homeland. Cape Verdeans have made movement a part of their identity instead of seeing it as the absolute opposite of belonging. And that is how islands located far apart still maintain a shared rhythm. Afternoon falls at the Mindelo port. A ferry leaves the dock, trailing a wake of white waves, before fading into the stretch of water heading toward Santo Antão. On deck are commuters, people visiting home, cargo, and unfinished stories from one island. Those islands are not the same. What brings them closer lies in the Criollo language, in music, family, memories, and the habit of finding a way across the sea. Isolation has created many limits. The people respond by moving, adapting, sharing responsibilities, and staying connected with those who have left. They do not exist on the margins of the Atlantic Ocean. They turn the ocean itself into a path connecting their homeland with the rest of the world. When the lights on the shore are just tiny dots, the ferry keeps moving forward. Amidst far-flung islands, Cape Verde is not held together by a strip of land. It is held together by its people.